two players who already have Team Open wins under their belts.
Yeah, I know Corey Baumeister won a Team Open last year with, I believe it was Pete Ingram and Shaheen?
Yep, Shaheen Sarani.
Nice little squad. Now it's picked
Indeed.
up Daryl Ayers. Now the Magyar Dilks team that usually has Ayers has picked up Polium as their third, and Daryl is teamed with friends Pete Ingram and Corey Baumeister.
Matt Nass, Sam Pardee, and Ben Stark once won a Team Open. Ben
pretty
Weitz,
good
not a bad pickup, though. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Looks like Baumeister has mulligan to 5. Let's see if he can overcome it. Let's see what he's got here on the first turn.
How many permanents do you think he's put on a battlefield with 5 cards?
3.
6?
3.
Starts with the Flooded Strand, going to
Goose.
19.
He's digging hard. He's going for the Breeding Pool Goose, and he's going to make Goose, Egg, Land, 3 permanents, book it.
All right.
Plus Mox, plus Bobble, plus Emery. That's a perfect 5. Here it comes.
See how far he goes. There's a Breeding Pool. He's at 17.
Pass turn. Just
17, go. It's just Goose. You're right. It's 3. There's the food token.
All right. Looks like he's got a Steam Vince in hand, so he does have access to his red mana if he needs it. Let's see if Matthew Nass can have a more explosive turn 1. I know these decks can occasionally play 6, 7 permanents on the first turn, thanks to the likes of Mox Opal.
Not a bad one is Mox Opal. Speaking of not bad ones, Nass is going to start fetching a snow-covered island and casting Arkham's Astrolabe.
Now it's going to draw him a card, give him access to different colors of mana to play all of those blue and green, or are those green spells that he could draw.
I spy a Cryptic Command among the holdings. That one's not going to be relevant just yet, as he'll cast Mox Opal and pass.
Yeah, the Metalcraft not turned on just yet. Here is a turn to Oko, Thief of Crowns for Corey Baumeister, and he's going to go ahead and tick that up and make a food. That's going to give him a significant advantage here on the play, even though he's on 5 cards.
If you use the Goose in the food, replace the food right away, and now we see what Matt Nass can do about it. Turn 2 Oko. Definitely one of the easiest ways to win games, but we're talking about decks that are doing the same or similar things going into the mid and late game. Other powerful cards, like their copies of Urza Lord High Artificer, can really throw a wrench in that.
Yeah, turn 2 tap land from Matthew Nass and no artifact for the Mox Opal. You got to imagine this is not the ideal start, but if I'm not mistaken, does have a Metallic Rebuke in hand, so does have access to a bit of defense here, thanks to the Convoke? Conspire?
No, Improvise.
Improvise? Yeah, you know, one of those million tap your thing to do a thing.
Improvise, different than Convoke. It's kind of irritating. You can't tap colored artifacts for colored mana.
All right, well, looks like we have a Urza Lord High Artificer cast, and Metallic Rebuke snags it, eating up that food token, so can't turn into a 3/3 just yet, but replaces the food token easily.
Getting your spell countered on the play when you're on a double mulligan doesn't feel great, but Baumeister still does have that Oko. That'll go to 8, and he'll replace his food.
And Nass going to be looking for a free artifact like a Mishra's Bauble here to turn on Mox Opal so he can cast something like Urza Lord High Artificer this turn, but would probably settle for something like Oko Thief of Crowns, maybe Cryptic Commander Archmage's Charm at the ready to play some defense against this Oko. Does have the line at some point to maybe go bounce Oko and then counter it on the way back, and with Corey on so few cards, maybe that's just good enough.
Flooded Strand is land number 3. Nass will fetch to 18 off of that.
Now, Oko of his own, if he so chooses, can turn one of those artifacts into an elk and start applying pressure the other way. But notably, his Oko is significantly less loyalty right now than Corey's, so may want to actually make a 3/3 and play defense. May just want to make a food too, just to turn on the Mox Opal.
Land ends up being Breeding Pool, so Nass shocks to 16. Could have cast the Oko off of the Astrolabe, but has higher aspirations for his mana.
Yep, may have another Metallic Rebuke, and if he ticks the Oko up to 6 and makes a food token, has Metallic Rebuke at the ready. Just have to wait and see.
Right. Astrolabe becomes Elkstrolabe. Baumeister's Oko are knocked to 5. 5 all for the Okos.
Elkham's Astrolabe.
That plays.
All right. Look, Patrick was having none of my shenanigans, even less so than you.
You've met the man.
I have.
Yeah.
I like him a lot. But homie don't play that.
No.
All right, the attack for 3 does shrink the loyalty just a bit, but dueling Okos usually favors the person who has more cards in hand that can interact, and right now, Baumeister does just have an island in that Ether Spellbomb, whereas Matthew Nass has a complete full grip, 5 or 6 cards in hand. It's just going to be tough to overcome.
Spellbomb cast and immediately cashed in for a card. Snow-covered island is land number 4 for Baumeister.
Yeah, couldn't really afford to bounce the Elkstralabe just because that would allow Nass to recast it and draw an extra card. Put him even further behind on resources. So he cycled it digging for probably something like Urza, Lord High Artificer, or Cryptic Command of his own. Maybe even that Experimental Frenzy tech that they've been working on for their teamer portion of the deck.
Oko to 6. Food becomes Elk, and that's going to hang back as we go back over to Matt Nass.
Perhaps a slight misstep here from Baumeister. Did not leave himself green mana to make a food token with the Gilded Goose. Just an island in hand. That extra artifact can come in handy in a number of scenarios. Every little piece matters, you know.
Did he draw island off of the Spellbomb?
No, he had Spellbomb in hand. He drew... oh, maybe he did draw a second island.
Right, yeah, he had an island before he popped Spellbomb, so he might have a spell now.
Sure.
Right, Mystic Sanctuary, this time untapped for Nass, puts Metallic Rebuke on top. A tap of 4, it's Urza, Lord High Artificer.
And notably doesn't have access to Metallic Rebuke even if he had drawn it because he turned the food token into an elk.
Mathbot joins the party. Oko makes a food.
Now, this game may take another 10-15 minutes to conclude, but unless Baumeister has a ridiculous sequence of draws here, I cannot fathom that he comes close to winning this game. He is, even though he has Oko active and he can poof the Urza to turn off the mana generation and all that other stuff, I just don't think it's going to be nearly enough.
We'll see what he can do. He starts with Arkham's Astrolabe, draws a card.
And another Ether Spellbomb, I believe, but can use that and bounce the Construct. Maybe turn the Goose into a 3/3, play some defense. It's just real tough because everything that Nass is doing is creating some card economy, and Corey is just being more reactive than anything, and that's negative card economy when everything generates 2 for 1.
Yeah, so it is just another Ether Spellbomb and a land. Oko to 1. Baumeister would like to trade Astrolabe for Urza.
Forgot you could just do that. That's pretty good.
Looks like Nass might have a response, though. Tapping food to make a blue. We'll see if it's just floating mana or if it's casting a spell. Mox Opal floats a mana as well. Icefang Kodal draws that Metallic Rebuke.
Yeah, Icewing Quaddle is something these decks were playing a ton like a week ago, but everyone kind of figured out that it was not very good against the Primeval Titan decks or the Mirror. So a lot of players moved away from it in favor of, you know, more counterspell interaction. Some people playing Stoic Rebuttal. This teamer version has gone more towards Galvanic Blast. A lot of potential innovation inside this archetype.
It's sort of like playing Vintage. First, you put all the restricted cards in your deck. Ancestral Recall, Time Walk, you know, Oko, Urza.
Yep.
Mox Opal, that one's obvious.
Yep.
Then put some junk in there.
I see a lot of decks in Vintage that don't play Mox Opal. I don't get it. Mostly the Opal decks are only in the Paradox Outcome strats, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, in Vintage. But that was an analog to just playing regular Mox in Vintage.
Sure.
It's kind of messed up that the Outcome decks just have like 6 blue Mox.
Yeah. Now Oko here looks like gonna be the thief once again. We're just gonna keep exchanging permanents for the Urza, bounce it back and forth.
Oko does not have a no trade back policy.
No takesies, backsies.
Looks like food for Urza is the proposed exchange. And that'll work. Misty Rainforest, played by Nass.
The players here are playing meticulously just because there's so much on the line, but I gotta say, if they're gonna play this slowly, they have to. Or they can't play this slowly. Sorry, they need to pick up the pace if they want to actually finish the match. Like I said, I don't think Baumeister has a chance to win this game just because of how behind he is, and basically it's Oko v Oko, but one person has an extra 6 cards, right? And an active Urza represents a lot more than that. And now he doesn't even have the active Oko, so.
Yeah, Construct plus Ice Fang Kodal team up, and the Oko's down on Baumeister's side. And Nass will pass.
Yep. Gotta imagine there's going to be a crack. Yeah, Spellbomb cycling and a food token going to be made. Let's see if Corey can start to find a way out, but there's a Metallic Rebuke in Matthew Nass's hand.
Yeah, and both players know about that one. That was returned with Mystic Sanctuary.
Right.
Baumeister has 6 mana here. Not quite enough to get an Urza under that.
No, but he can get, whoa, Injure Explosive is a pretty big deal. It's on 3, so it's only really going to threaten the Oko, Thief of Crowns, but he does have enough mana to pay for him in a Metallic Rebuke thanks to the Gilded Goose. And cleaning up the Oko is a great first step and potentially coming back in this game.
Right, Explosives on 3 resolves. Mishra's Bobble deployed. And Baumeister will pass. Nass going to use this mana, spin the Urza, I assume.
Yeah, I have to imagine. Worst case scenario, you just like randomly hit a Cryptic Command or a Archmage's Charm. You just get to draw some cards and interact with the board favorably. He was holding up the mana for the Metallic Rebuke, but you know.
So there's that clause that I said that Urza should have. If you don't cast a spell, you should lose the game. Metallic Rebuke spun off the top. Now we see Baumeister use the Explosives now that the Urza activation is not up anymore. Oko down.
Yeah, I feel like Corey would agree with you immensely in this scenario. 3 mana here. Of course, using the Urza's ability to tap the Astrolabe for blue. Oko going to make another food, which in turn effectively gets an extra mana. And if I'm not mistaken, Matt has Cryptic Command and Metallic Rebuke in hand, so this is looking quite bad for Corey.
Back up Oko, make a food, attack with Ice Fang, Urza, Construct. What we got? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 power construct, so 6 coming across.
Yeah, that's a chunk of damage. Corey's only at 15, so this game could close pretty quickly. But those food tokens do make the game stretch out a bit longer if Corey so chooses. 5 mana potentially at the ready here for Nass. Can spin the Urza at the end of turn if nothing of consequence happens.
Baumeister went to 9, used Mishra's Bobble end step, draws 2 cards. Gilded Goose, Misty Rainforest, so now he's up to 3 foods.
EOT Nass can spin again just trying to hit Archmage's Charm or Ice Fang Quaddle or Cryptic Command just to gain a little bit of extra value in a marginal way, but value nonetheless. And when you're ahead, all you want to do is kind of press your advantage a bit. Now you can just use that mana to spin the Urza when you're holding it up for all those counter spells that he has in hand already.
Urza spins into Mox Opal. Nass already has one of those. Leave that exiled.
Seems like a perfect time for that Simpsons meme. Stop, he's already dead.
Well, the great news is that these foods can keep Baumeister alive for like an extra turn or 2.
Great.
Buckle up.
Okay. Well, everything's coming in rumbling here. There's bunch of artifacts on the battlefield. That Construct is threatening a bunch of damage. The food tokens can generate some. One Goose can easily block the Urza to not take one. Curious if that's going to happen or not.
Baumeister's going to go fetch up Snow-Covered Forest here. Looks like Goose getting in front of Construct.
He's going to just make a food.
That 8 off of the fetch. Makes that food. Goose down.
Ah, I like the pillows.
Yeah.
Yeah. See? You missed me.
I couldn't stay away.
All right.
All right, that's tight concession. Big fan.
Oh, yeah.
Baumeister picks him up. He's officially seen enough from Matt Nass.
All right. That game went in Nass's favor for sure, but the Temur Urza deck, I think when you don't mulligan to 5 and you have like a reasonable draw, the interaction points of Galvanic Blast I do think give him a bit of a leg up, but the card economy was just not there. And in those pseudo mirror matches where it's Urza Oko v Urza Oko, if you just have a better draw than your opponent, sometimes it just doesn't matter what they do,
Pardee and Nass picked up game 1 on their side of the table. Peter Ingram, the lone victor in the first game for Ayers, Baumeister, Ingram. We'll see what Baumeister can do in the sideboard, what he has. 3 Blood Moon, 3 Veil of Summer, 2 Anger of the Gods, 2 Mystical Dispute, 2 Ceremonious Rejection, a Disdainful Stroke, an Ashiok Nightmare Weaver, and Experimental Frenzy.
I think Frenzy is the mirror breaker. I would definitely bring in the 3rd copy of that. Disdainful Stroke, I think, is a little too narrow. It does counter some of the more important spells like Cryptic Command and Urza Lord High Artificer, but I think it's just a little too mediocre. Mystical Speed, on the other hand, is exceptional. I would definitely bring that in. And then Veil of Summer seems excellent. I would bring that in as well because of all of those reactive blue counter spells that really stifle a lot of your ETB effects like Urza, things of that nature.
All right, so for Matt Nass, the sideboard is 2 Dismember, 2 Veil of Summer, 2 Mystical Dispute, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Ashiok Dream Renders, 2 Damping Spheres, 2 Ceremonious Rejection, and a Pithing Needle.
So from Nass's side, the Dismembers make a lot of sense. Killing Imri or Urza for 1 mana is a huge deal. Veil of Summer, because of all the counter spells, and maybe some Dismembers out the other side, probably want those. Mystical Dispute seems excellent. Everything else kind of meh. Even those Ceremonious Rejection counters artifacts, and it's an artifact-based deck. It's not really an artifact deck. It's really just a permanent-based deck, right?
Sure.
So
a lot of the permanents on either side are the same, so Pithing Needle's tough to leverage.
Now, a lot of them are colored permanents that generate an artifact, too.
Right. Right, we got a new Magic set coming up. It's Theros Beyond Death, Return to Theros, as it were. Over on StarCityGames.com. Got everyday low price of $99.99 for a pre-order on a box, or if you have wisely subscribed to SCG Premium, you're reading all of Todd Anderson's articles as well as the rest of the
Hell
staff.
Yeah.
You can get your box for $94.99.
Yeah, the Star City Games Premium members get a whole lot of stuff. Not only do you get access to the best Magic content that the internet has to offer, the likes of Paulo Vitor Dominarosa, Brad Nelson. You can throw me in there if you want to.
Sullivan's Satchel.
Sullivan's Satchel. Those are the guys that are really the draws. You just get to read my Pioneer stuff sometimes if you want to,
It's a nice kicker.
But on top of that, for signing up for SCG Premium, you also get 10% off all singles and 15% off all other various merchandise, whether it be playmats, various other supplies, deck boxes, and things of that nature.
Right, well, if you want to go get your Theros TBH, it's quite simple. You go to StarCityGames.com/THB.
What did you just say?
Cutting an ad, Todd.
Okay. Well, you said TBD, THB, TBH.
Correct.
Nice. Okay. As long as it was on purpose, it's fine. It's like we're underway here for game number 2. Baumeister on the play.
Fetch, Shock, Breeding Pool once again. Goose, Food, and Mishra's Bauble. 4. Count on 4 permanents this time. Baumeister's at 17.
That is 1 more than last time.
Just Snow-Covered Island for Nass.
That's way fewer than last time.
Let's see. Last time, Baumeister did have turn 2 Oko. Kind of the ideal start.
Yeah, this time around, though, it could get hit with a Mystical Dispute, so even if he had it, Baumeister might actually want to wait until he has mana to fight back with his own Mystical Dispute or Veil Summer or something of that nature. Said he's going to go with Emery. No response from Matt Nass, and that's going to allow him to mill some and get that engine online.
That one's not bad. You see some Mishra's Bobble, some Mox Opal in the graveyard.
Yeah, I see a Galvanic Blast hanging out in Corey's hand, so he has an answer here to an opposing Urza, something like that.
Grafdigger's Cage. That's a neat one.
Cool being wrong here. They're not playing that many Emerys, right? Just like 1 or 2?
Yeah, 2 in the main deck.
This Grafdigger's Cage is pretty interesting because it actually completely shuts down the format breaker, Experimental Frenzy.
Yeah, it turns out Frenzy and
mad.
Baumeister's playing 4 Emerys.
Yeah.
So there's more to shut off there. And
there's an Emery on the battlefield already, too, which
right,
is already
yeah.
shut down. So.
Nass may have boarded out his Emerys as well.
Yeah. So I think one of the bigger draws of Emery is the card Engineer Explosives, and in these mirror matches, Explosives is always going to kill a bunch of your own stuff because you are playing a mirror match. So it makes some amount of sense if you're going to board out Explosives to also board out the Emerys, especially if you want to bring in Grafdigger's Cage to shut off the Experimental Frenzies. So I expect right now that's what Corey's asking, Pete. You just want to make sure because it's a weird interaction because you are technically playing the spells from the top of your deck. They don't get exiled or anything weird like that. But he's just going to, I think he's just getting some clarification from a judge to make sure, especially if he has an Experimental Frenzy in hand, definitely doesn't want to just spend a whole turn and a food token to cast it if it's not going to do anything.
Judge, I have 2 questions. What is this and why me?
Yeah.
Corey is in a little bit of trouble now. We'll see if he can assemble an Oko or an Urza and actually do something meaningful from here. But that Emery's not doing much. It's attacking for 1. That's what it's doing. Nass to 19.
This hand would normally be pretty good. Galvanic Blast, Experimental Frenzy, Veil Summer, and a land, as well as the Emery on the battlefield. But that Grafdigger's Cage is doing double duty right now. Shut off Emery and Experimental Frenzy. Veil Summer doesn't currently have anything to protect.
Arkham's Astrolabe, cast by Nass. He'll draw a card. A Mox Opal. That's metal crafted now. Flooded Strands land for turn, and that's where Nass will pass. Baumeister fetches end step off that Misty Rainforest down to 16.
Pardee and Nass are mainstays on the Pro Tour, or were. I'm not sure how that works now with the MPL. I know Matt Nass is in the MPL, correct?
There's no way of knowing.
There is literally no way of knowing. I don't even think a website exists.
Can't be known.
And if it did exist, I would know about it because I am completely and utterly enveloped in Magic culture.
Right.
You would think that I would know.
I would ask you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know.
We could ask Matt.
You could ask Matt, but that takes some work.
True. He's
Right.
He's busy.
Director Dan, get the judge to ask Nass if he's in the MPL because nobody knows.
Food token generated by the Gilded Goose.
Oh, my.
Snow-covered Islands, land number 4 for Baumeister.
Might have an Oko here. Looks like.
There is an Oko.
Just getting confirmation from our director. He found it on a website. There is apparently a website somewhere that says that Matthew Nass is in the MPL, so we'll trust Director Dan, though. I'm still skeptical.
On. Dan, is it a credible source?
Yeah. Is it on the Wizards' own homepage? He says it's on the Wizards' homepage. I believe him.
That's a credible source.
There it is. If it's okay. All right.
All right, so here's an Oko for Baumeister, and that's going to turn the Grafdigger's Cage into an Elk. That could be a nice swing because I believe that he's got an Experimental Frenzy hanging out in hand.
Yeah, that Mystical Dispute was supposed to be Nass's trump card here to keep Oak off the battlefield, but Corey had the with the Veil Summer, and that allows the Oko to stick, Elkify the Grafdigger's Cage, which unlocks not only the Emery on the battlefield, but the Experimental Frenzy in hand. And now the next few turns might be pretty explosive for Baumeister.
Also, the Emery unlocked now, so Mistress Bobble returned from the graveyard.
Lots of extra cards. Those extra cards don't work that well with Experimental Frenzy, but honestly, if you get something like Urza on the battlefield, it doesn't really matter what you do with Frenzy. You just get to cast like 18 spells a turn thanks to all that extra mana generation. And
if you have Urza, the Bobble's a Mox Sapphire.
Right.
Card's pretty good.
Talking about Moxon, how come Urza doesn't see that much play in Vintage? Card seems messed up. I guess all the artifacts already tap for a mana.
Right.
Is the joke. So it's like, hey, here's a 4-mana 1/4 that makes a 5/5. Great. Let's Timber Aperture. I'd rather play Timber Aperture.
Yikes. Yeah, most of the decks that make a lot of artifacts just play 4 workshops, and they can't cast Urza.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, because of the first Elk on the Graph Digger's Cage from Corey, and Oko from Nass is going to potentially chop down the opposing Oko from Corey, and now...
So that woke up Arkham's Astrolabe. There's an attack from both Elks. Oko to 2. Gilded Goose will chump block the other, so Baumeister keeps his Oko around.
Just got confirmation from one of the other feature match tables that the team of Magiage, Dilks, and Pulliam have won their match. Even though they were paired down and had to play the last round, they are into the top 4, guaranteed.
Not ones to miss.
They do not miss much.
And Dilks.
Was it you who was telling me that Dilks was like, yeah, I'm just going to play like this first team open, then I'm going to go do like real life stuff for the rest of the year?
No, Nick Miller was talking about it.
Yeah, good luck, dude.
Yeah.
You're just going to win this tournament. You're making a run for the Players' Championship. The next year of your life is over.
What a ringing endorsement of engaging in our tournament circuit.
That's not what I mean. What I mean is that Magic consumes you as a person, and it becomes the only thing of importance. That's all.
That doesn't sound cursed.
Many things in my life are cursed.
The card games are also cursed. And here's Experimental Frenzy for Corey Baumeister.
And a fetch land actually pretty good here from Baumeister because it actually allows a reset. Though he doesn't have the Urza yet to complete the true combo because the it's really important here that he's able to reset the top of the deck. He needs mana to be able to cast all the stuff, and Urza plus Frenzy is the breaker. It's not just Frenzy.
A nice swing for Baumeister. Galvanic Blast, Nass, Oko down to 1, then finishes off by elking a food token and getting in there.
Yep. That is going to leave his Oko vulnerable to the Elks from the other side, but I think that's okay when he's got the Frenzy active.
All right, replacement Oko for Nass.
Now, this might be a time where Nass is just like, all right, we're shoving. He's going to make his last artifact into a 3/3. He's going to send probably 1 at the Oko and 6 at face, but he could be a little more conservative and only go 3 at face and 6 at the Oko in case there's another Galvanic Blast, but I don't think you have to worry about that too much. Thanks to the Experimental Frenzy, you can only really cast the top card of your deck.
Right, with Fetch Land being the mana up, that wouldn't really work. But Oko down on Baumeister's side. Now we'll see what he can do with the Frenzy. Scalding Tarn off the top, Mox Opal off the top, mana floating first off an old Mox. Mistress Bobble to follow. Cracks a Scalding Tarn.
Yeah, here we're about to have a real turn. If he hits an Urza, we're going to see it go into Hyperdrive. Still has 1 more reset.
1 blue mana in the pool. Baumeister to 9 off the fetch.
Yeah, Mox Opal doing a real good Lotus Petal impression here. Has another fetch land, maybe considering not cracking it, but I'm going to go ahead and do so just to make sure that he can keep the train rolling. Now, there is 9 power on the other side of the battlefield from him. Nass is crunching in pretty hardcore here. Baumeister needs to find something to interact. Explosives, Urza, anything.
He would love to get an Urza.
Red mana being tapped here. This might be a Galvanic Blast. Pretty hot. Blast down the Oko, attack it with the Emery for 1. Hold back the Elk to block and trade. Go to 2 life, maybe. It's a heater.
Well, he's tapping that snow-covered mountain, consulting teammate Peter Ingram about the top card of the library. It is Galvanic Blast. Elk or Oko is the question. Looks like they're talking about Elk. They went for 1 of the 1 mana Elks, so there's still a 0 mana and a 1 mana Elk on Nass's side.
I think that's because there just might be a backup Mox Opal in Nass's hand, and if that's the case, you don't want to unlock it. Because if he plays a new Mox Opal, it still has the name and the legendary status. You just don't have the artifact status or the rest of the text.
Sure. Here's a Gilded Goose off the top. More food.
All right, and a passing of the turn. Top card must have just been a land. He can generate another food with the geese and crack one. Oh, I'm sorry, the geese has summoning sickness. A goose has summoning sickness, so he can just crack some food here and gain 6 life and put him out of range of death, which is kind of why I like going after the Oko, because you have those food tokens to not just die next turn. Your life total matters significantly less than checking that Planeswalker. But that's also like, you don't know how the rest of the frenzy turn's going to go. It could go way better for you, and then it's much better to make sure you just don't die.
Right. That's half the fun.
Yeah.
It's also half the misery. Nass is going to attack with those 2 elk. They'll trade with Baumeister's only elk. 3 damage comes across.
Goose.
Gilded Goose, make a food.
It's real, you know, I said it was probably land on top, but it might be a counter spell like a Mystical Dispute or Metallic Rebuke or something. He elkifies the Goose, giving himself another food token next turn for convoking Metallic Rebuke or some such.
Gilded Elk.
6 life is the play for Baumeister. Eats those 2 food tokens. Let's see if he can have another busted frenzy turn. Let's see what happens.
So he drew. Now he's looking at the top card. Where do we want to go? Used both of the Scalding Tarns he had last turn, so there's no resets on the battlefield just yet.
No, but the deck does play quite a few fetch lands.
Steam Vent's first card off the top. Not an ideal start. Mox Amber to follow.
Does tap for blue thanks to Emery. So a ton of mana at his disposal, a bunch of cards in hand. Has the ability to pop a few baubles, make a food token with Gilded Goose. So a lot of decisions left to be made. Scanning the graveyard just to make sure, I guess, what's left in his deck as far as like win conditions, interaction pieces.
Yeah, what's left in the deck? Is there anything I can Emery here that matters?
Now, he may also be looking at potentially cracking the Experimental Frenzy because he's already gained so many cards, and he has a bunch of cards in hand. He can maybe unlock them, but I feel like maybe we should wait on that just a little bit. Maybe after he cracks all these baubles and gets his hand completely full, then EOT crack the Frenzy on tap, go bananas with an Urza. Who knows?
Well, he's just going to pass. Back over to Matt Nass.
Now, I'll say Nass is like relatively advantaged as far as pressure is concerned. Does have the Oko, potentially 3 Elks this turn if he so chooses. But as far as card economy is concerned, Baumeister is significantly ahead. So it's going to be on Nass to try to kind of steal this game out from under Baumeister, just with maybe things like Cryptic Command to tap down all the blockers. Baumeister here does need to put up some amount of defense. That Goose only gains 3 life a turn.
So something you were mentioning earlier, you saw Nass almost play a Mox Opal, but one of his Elk is still Opal, so he can only have one or the other. Attack with both Elks, put Baumeister down to 5.
Gonna try to exchange Emery for food here, I would imagine.
Yeah, that is the proposed trade. That works. That's right. Baumeister responds by tapping Emery. That makes sense. Would be kind of ironic to Emery back at Grafdigger's Cage.
Yeah. It's probably what he's wanted to do because it does shut down that Experimental Frenzy, you know. Now, Goose cast here, and this is going to allow Baumeister to cast a Metallic Rebuke off the top of his deck. A little bit of awkward synergy between Experimental Frenzy and these counter spells, but here they're looking okay.
Makes a food on the end step. Sacrifices a food, Baumeister to 8.
Baumeister needs some way to put up a defense here. He's looking at potentially 9 damage coming his way. He can gain some life, but it's really just stemming the bleeding. It's not really solving the problem.
Floats a mana, another Mox Opal off the top.
Red man tap, probably a Gal Blast. That Oko down.
Yep. Oko down, as you said.
Baumeister continuing the rest of his turn. Maybe an Oko.
Backup Frenzy, not ideal, but it gets it off the top.
Kind of a reset button. It's going to make it harder for him to unlock the cards that are in his hand if he so chooses. But he's so far ahead on overall cards, I'm not sure if that's going to be too big of a deal. I think the biggest thing is just making sure he can deal with these elk on the other side of the table. And maybe that Emery. But
so he passes. Getting an update that Sam Pardee did win 2-0 over Ayers. That means Baumeister needs to win this one and the next one to stay alive.
I have to think Baumeister's kind of playing this game. He passed pretty quick last turn. I think he's got a counterspell on top of the deck. Found what he wanted to make sure Emery plus Grafdigger's Cage didn't happen. Didn't play it out. I'm curious if it's Metallic Rebuke or maybe something is maybe even stronger like Archmage's Charm or Cryptic Command. And then it'll be a check to see if the top card of Corey's deck is another piece of interaction if Nass has a rebuttal.
Looks like Nass is going to cast that Mox Opal now. That's going to destroy the Elk Opal he had. Activate Emery, cast Grafdigger's Cage from the graveyard. Mystical Dispute off the top for Baumeister.
Yeah, it only costs 1 mana, and while Nass can play Metallic Rebuke of his own, he cannot pay 3 mana for the Mystical Dispute, because that Mox Opal does not have Metalcraft.
So Rebuke's back. Can still tap the Opal for that.
Okay, so it looks like the Rebuke back works. Baumeister here. Can't quite pay, I don't think. It has just the Mox Amber, the Gilded Goose, and a Steam Vents. Oh, that's 3 he could pay. I don't really know. Maybe he's just contemplating not paying because the food token might be more important thanks to the life gain.
He just has Steam Vents Goose, and then he has Mox that he can't tap. It's a Mox Amber.
Oh, the Emery's on the other side of the battlefield now. That was the okay. That was turning it on. My apologies.
All right, so Grafdigger's Cage back on the table, and Baumeister now under double frenzy.
Yeah, this one might be a little too much to overcome, and it's not even in the face of that much pressure, which is really awkward. Though one of the Elks did leave the battlefield, so now the Goose kind of just checks the Elk for a while, and Baumeister can maybe sack both frenzies over the next 2 turns while making a food and sacrificing it, or can it maybe chump block with Goose, double pop both frenzies, untap, and go off. Either one of those seems reasonable.
So all Baumeister did was draw and pass. All this frenzy Goose stuff he can do at instant speed. We'll see what Nass can do to apply more pressure. Out comes Astrolabes, the spell he will start on.
Well, it's kind of funny, right? Because the Grafdigger's Cage shuts off Frenzy, but the Frenzy shuts off your hand, so you can't really cast anything until the Frenzies are gone or the Cage is gone.
Right. Emery and Elk attack. Goose jumps in front of Emery. Baumeister sacks the food he already had. Goes to 5, takes 3 back to 2.
All right, looks like we're going to make a food and pop a Frenzy. Be my guess.
Nass is going to sacrifice Polluted Delta to 17.
Has the required number of islands to get Mystic Sanctuary if he so chooses, but I don't think Metallic Rebuke is that good in the spot. See if he thinks differently.
Yeah, it doesn't seem great. Baumeister heavy on mana and heavy on options as soon as he gets the frenzies off the table. Has no options, at what point why do you want to counterspell if he, as long as he has the frenzies. So it's just going to be Snow-Covered Island for Nass. Urza, Lord High Artificer, makes an appearance.
He's going to make some quip about the raw number of permanents on the battlefield of each side of the table, just because a buddy of mine from way back when was a huge Warp World fan. Just thinking about Urza Warp World, you know, just daydreaming. Because, holy crap, this is a slog.
Do you think that Warp World would speed up or slow down the game?
I don't know. I don't want to think about it anymore. All right, here's probably an Urza coming down for Baumeister. He's got access to a ton of cards in hand and a ton of mana, and now he's unlocked. Let's see what he can do.
Yep, smashed both Frenzies. Now here is Urza.
Look, it was a failed experiment, okay? The Grafdigger's Cage was problematic.
Well, it was pretty rushed, you know. That'll happen.
Yeah. All right, tapping 2 artifacts for mana. Probably going to be casting an Oko here, I'd have to imagine, if that's what he's... Oh, never mind. That's strange.
Gilded Goose. Cast off of Waterlogged Grove.
Oh, sorry, he untapped those 2. I thought he was like tapping 3 and then just cast Goose, but I don't know.
It's like a couple of Goose showing up, but then Baumeister just has to concede. Or the match finished off camera. Unclear. But it didn't look great even still. The double Frenzy versus Grafdigger's Cage, that was a huge tempo swing in Nass's favor there.
Yeah, I think that game was like pretty well in hand for Nass. You know, Baumeister had basically 1 turn to recoup, and he could have played quite a few permanents that turn, but I don't know if he would have been able to claw back in the game. There was still a lot of Magic left to be played, but unfortunate for Baumeister, Ayers, and Ingram. They are defeated by Pardee, Nass, and Weitz. And now it's up to the tiebreaker gods.